Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel with myself, Isabella. Today we're going to be doing another Smirnova Chats episode where we talk about how I replaced Olga Smirnova at the graduation performance where we did Humpbacked Horse. This was a really critical performance for me, which was again just really tough because I had very little experience of performing at all. It's like everything happened really quickly all of a sudden. So I was in year 8. As you can tell now at the school there are only 8 years, and that's what it was like previously, but then that changed. Luckily, to be honest, when I was there was 9 years, which actually I was very fortunate to experience because, as I've said before in other episodes, I definitely needed the extra time. In year 8, I up to that point had only performed, well actually I'd only ever performed at the school in the foreigners show. I did my Paquita variation, I think in my first year there, which went really well and it was really nice. But then in the Nutcracker, I'd only performed once. So the first 2 years I wasn't cast at all. I'm not even sure why, to be honest, but I think again I was still the sort of fresh English girl and I was still getting the reputation there to be cast, even though I was obviously learning every single role and trying really, really hard. Again, that's all I'd done. So I'd only ever done one solo and done Soloist Snowflakes and Rosewalls. Again, a group scenario on the Mariinsky stage and not much performance experience. So then it became known in year 8 that in the graduation show, again, I wouldn't be performing because I was cast like in people's minds as already a soloist or as a principal in kind of status, not because of my experience or anything, but just physically because I'm really tall. I'm not somebody that sort of fits in a group or a corps de ballet. In their eyes, I was also too talented to put at the back of the corps as well because I'm tall. Almost like a catch-22, like they thought I was too talented to just shove at the back and do core stuff, but then I was also not ready / too lacking in reputation to then do a solo principal role already. So I was like, okay, so I'm just not gonna perform then, I'll just wait. So, you know, I was a bit frustrated by that point. You know, I was like, well, if I'm so talented, like for God's sake, just put me on. So then an opportunity came up. And as you guys know, like I have definitely suffered with anxiety and self-doubt, which is really, really awful and sort of crippling. And I really wish I didn't have this problem. And it was terrible when I was a teenager. But basically, you know, Olga Smirnova had to replace Christina Chapran. Those two women were graduating this year because they were the year above me. What happened was Christina Chapran was supposed to do La Bayadère and do, you know, the final act of La Bayadère all in white and do that amazing role of Nikia. Olga in the first act was going to do Humpbacked Horse. So as Christina was ill, Olga had to replace Christina. And then this is where the phrase came up where my teacher came up to me and she said, look, you know, Christina's injured, Olga has to replace her. There's only 3 ballerinas in this school who can perform lead roles on that stage and you're one of them. And I was like, what? Are you joking? And then that's the first time I heard, I don't know, I just heard that phrase that they classed me as one of 3 stars ballerinas in the school. And I was like, wow, okay, a lot has progressed in the last 3 years. But again, I was like, so you think of me as that kind of status, that kind of stature, but again, I haven't had that experience yet. But it's not even I haven't had experience of just principal roles. I don't have any experience at that point, like barely any, because we didn't get much at the Royal Ballet School. I wasn't given much when I first went to the Smirnova because again, I was new and they were like, who's this foreigner? You know, they were like, you're going to replace Olga in the Humpbacked Horse and you've got a week to learn it. Now in hindsight, because I'm older now and more secure in myself, you know, got higher self-esteem, I'd be like, great, amazing, gonna go for it. A relish challenge, I will go for this. Initially I was like, oh my god, amazing, I'm so excited, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get this role, I'm gonna perform it. But then sheer panic started to set in. I was like, oh my god, how am I gonna prepare this role in a week's time? And also I panicked because I thought, oh no, they see such amazing talent in me, I can't let them down. And this is where, like, honestly, like mental sort of how you think really plays a huge impact in what happens. Basically, I rehearsed as much as I could, but during rehearsals, because my shoes at the time were really small, like they weren't great, and I was still mastering what shoes I wanted. They were also rock solid when they were new, so I could barely start a new pair, you know, within a week of the performance, because they just wouldn't be soft enough. And this role was literally all jumping, so I couldn't start in rock solid shoes. So what happened was, I was dealing with my like old, softer, grungy shoes, which looked awful. Then I managed to get a blister on my heel, which is like the worst thing ever, you know, like a huge blister on your heel. You can't actually wear shoes, you can barely point your foot, especially not very, very tight point shoes. Rubbing on the heel is like the most painful thing. So for the first like 4 days, I couldn't rehearse barely at all. I was just rehearsing in like socks. I literally couldn't put my point shoes on. My teacher was like, okay. I learnt all the roles and I was just sort of rehearsing it on flat. And then I obviously started wearing point shoes, and it was okay. I was managing. What was awful was, again, my shoes were just so soft, and like, you know, when your shoes go like mush and then they completely sort of mesh into this really weird shape, and then the box on the end was sort of like uneven. They just felt awful. But again, my shoes at the time, this was before I made adjustments, they were just so hard, and I just couldn't start in a brand new, very tight shoe. So I was a bit screwed. I did the best I could in the rehearsals, but I just, with all these factors at play, I didn't trust myself, and I really didn't feel confident in myself, because it was up until that point that the only thing that made me feel really confident, a lot of preparation, like a huge amount of preparation. So lots of rehearsals, lots of practicing, and that's when I felt really secure. So I was rehearsing as much as I could at night time, going to the studio, and I felt a little bit better. But I had major imposter syndrome. It sort of demoralized me a little bit. So when it came to the show, it was almost like, and it's really sad, it was almost like I really didn't believe that I could do it. And I didn't believe that I was supposed to lead the show and be the principal. Like, it was again the thing of, you know, you've worked so hard for this, here's the opportunity. But then you're like, but this can't actually be the opportunity that's going to take me to the next level, because I'm the one who just always tries really hard and rehearses loads. Even though I tried to psych myself up loads, I really struggled. And so instead of rising above the difficulties, I was extremely nervous. I was so nervous, and with my lack of experience, I didn't know how to handle the nerves. I didn't know how to handle the inexperience, and just to believe that everything would be okay. I wasn't sure of techniques to trust myself, very important to do. And so when I went on stage, I was like, I had this sort of slow motion moment. And again, just remember, it's not like, oh, you've been on stage loads of times, but just as a core member or a soloist, you know, in small groups and stuff. I've barely been on stage at all. I really didn't know how to handle this and the pressure. I was like, I've gone from 0 to 100 and I'm not sure how to handle it. It's great that everyone else believes in me, but I really don't 100% believe in myself. It was at the beginning of the ballet, and I was just like chassing forwards, and I've actually got this on video, and I have shared some of it, because some of it looks nice and it looks really nice, but then you don't know what's going on in my head. I'm like, oh my god. There's a moment at the beginning of the ballet, you chasse forwards and you look out to the audience just before you start, and it's like silent just before I start, and I had like a really out of body experience, like, oh my god, I'm on my own on this stage right now, and there's 2,000 people watching, holy moly. And then it was like I was like starting to jump, but I wasn't actually feeling at all what I was doing, and it was like I was just having this like out of body experience. It was like an anxiety attack gone wrong. Initially, obviously, people have spoken about how they get on stage and their nerves just immediately disappear. Mine didn't disappear until, I don't know, halfway through. And by that point, there had been some definite errors in the turns, quite a lot of stumbling, which like I never stumble, like, you know, usually in class, as you can see, I'm like rock solid, super confident, but I really let my head get to me. I really let my, let's call her inner ordeal to tell me, you know, negative things and make me feel like an imposter. I definitely self-sabotaged half of that performance. And then for whatever reason, something woke up in me halfway through and was just like, for God's sake, get get your stuff together, like wake up, like this is a great opportunity, like you're fine, you're great, for God's sake, enjoy it. It was amazing. I could pull myself out of the hole, and then the rest of the performance was really nice and I enjoyed it, and I instantly felt better after that one show. I was like, okay, I reckon the next time could be better. But I'd already slightly screwed up, you know, at the beginning. Afterwards I was in the wings, and this is a funny story, and I don't think he's going to watch it, but I was with my friend Sander Parish. We went to Russia sort of at the same time. I went to the school, he went to the company, and I was in the wings with Sander after the show, and he hadn't watched the show, and I was like, thank God, because that was awful. That was like the worst thing I've ever done. And I was talking to him, and then Altanai, the Smirnova at the time, the director, walks in the wings, and she looks at me and she sort of walks past and goes, and walks off. So like she gave me the death stare, and I knew exactly what that meant. That was like, you screwed up and you let me down. And I knew I'd let her down and let myself down, at least for the first half of it. And then Xander saw that look and was like, Jesus, what was that? And I was like, I don't know, I've got no idea. I literally couldn't admit, like, it's because I failed half an hour ago, you weren't here. I felt really bad. Again, so many lessons are learned from your failures. And in a way, I wish they'd realise that for someone young who has very little experience, it might be, even though they'll be like, oh no, she's fine, like she's one of 3 ballerinas, like she can handle this. It's like, okay, I may look like a ballerina and perform like a ballerina in the classroom, but I've had 0 experience of a ballerina. So for God's sake, throw me on and do a solo at least. Like the year before, don't make me carry a ballet. I literally just didn't know how to handle it on a mental note. I just didn't think of myself that way. I hadn't had enough experience to think that I could carry a ballet. So it was a real experience. You know, in shows after that and experiences after that were already a lot better, because I realized many things, one of which was that I need to be a little bit heavier, because another thing I noticed was, because I was so nervous, it was taking away energy from my body. And I realized that I was also extremely thin. Like I say, in the studio, for example, in the exams, like, yeah, I'm super skinny. This is in year 8, I was super skinny because I had been told to lose weight, so I really took that seriously. We'll talk about that another time. I didn't exactly have a major issue or anything, and I lost loads of weight. So even though I felt strong in the studio, when it came to like the stage and eating up this like enormous space, and I had to do, you know, pacaru jeté, pacaru assemblée across the stage, I was like, with my nerves and with the fact that my adrenaline is roaring through me, I don't have the energy, I don't have the physical energy to perform, to eat up this stage, to travel, to use my strength. I have no strength left. And it was after that I decided many things, one of which was, I'm going to enjoy every performance. I'm not going to let nerves get to me. I'm not going to let stupid feelings like doubt get in the way. Doing something that I'm good at, being called one of 3 ballerinas in this insane school is such a privilege, and thoughts like self-doubt shouldn't creep in, no matter how much experience I have. And also that I'm never going to listen to anyone again when they say, oh, you need to lose weight, you should look a certain way, you should look different. In my opinion, that really was damaging to my performance. So after that, I gained a couple of kilos, still was super thin, and I then performed the next year and just looked, you know, like a proper ballerina, much stronger, and I was much more confident. I just felt like, oh, I was like a strong ox, like a strong animal, like I had much more strength behind any nerves that I may have had. You know, although I'm being very vulnerable here and sharing a very upsetting and difficult experience I had, I think it's a really important one to share, because there were many things at play there, like self-doubt, anxiety, imposter syndrome, and also being underweight, that all made my performance suffer. Looking after yourself is number one. Like, yeah, listen to people's opinions, but take it with a pinch of salt. And also, if someone believes in you and believes that you can go on stage and carry something like that, it doesn't matter what you've done before, forget it. Doesn't matter what experience or lack of experience you have. Here's your opportunity now. Relish it, enjoy it. Take every opportunity and every performance with a sense of anticipation and excitement, rather than dread and fear. So those are my thoughts, and that's when I replaced Olga Smirnova in the graduation show, and the second half was definitely better than the first half, but a lot was learned. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're interested in more chats about anxiety, self-doubt, I've got a successful podcast, A Dancer's Mindset, where I help so many of you in your journey to becoming not only better dancers, but also better people and human beings with a good head on your shoulders, as I've learned a lot because I've been there myself. Thank you so much, and bye for now.